Test. Test, test, test. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the morning market briefing. It's Monday, January 5th, 2026. Hope you are doing well out there. Thanks to those who are joining us on the YouTubes. If you're not, check it out. If you go to YouTube and search the morning market briefing, you can find the page there. You can subscribe. You can get alerts for every time we're live. We'd love to have you here. We've got 7 watching right now. No big deal. We've got a couple thumbs up. Just got another one. Four likes on this bad boy. So
Wow.
pretty big time. The set, I think, is looking pretty nice right now. We do have a light up Zen sign back there above Ben. I'm told it's too bright when we turn it on. So tough times. I don't know. Should we give the people a sample?
Oh yeah, fire it up. Let's see what the people think. A lot of rewards points went into that. It's been in my office for probably 4 years. Let's see. We got a little bit of delay. Yeah, it's a little too. We'd have to do some white balancing, try and get the real fully feel of it. But suffice to say, it's very cool. A lot of cool people have those.
Cool,
really just me. I think I'm the only person who happens to have one of those.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. But too bright. I agree. I think everybody was right in their assessment of it. But anyways, we're excited about the year. Happy 2026, everybody. Let's jump in. There's big news over the weekend. We're going to get to that, I promise you. But let's roll back to Friday. A bit of probably a pretty quiet day around here. I came by for a little while in the afternoon, and the young boys were just grinding away, just working away, but it seemed like it was quiet.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they were in their desks, I'll say that. But we got Trump backing off tariffs for an additional year on a number of items, man.
Yeah, I think this is significant. It's something that had been talked about a little bit, but no additional tariffs on upholstered furniture. That was going to be an additional 25%, and no tariffs on timber lumber derivative products for another year. So this is really notable because it came despite people not really talking about. I mean, they've been talking about affordability and inflation and all of that, but not specifically these items. So I think it's interesting that Trump is now. He set the bar. I mean, just like Tom always talks about, he set the bar. Stephen Moran set the bar with where interest rates should be, and then if you meet in the middle, you're still doing, you're achieving your aims and also being fairly market friendly. And I think that not a lot of people talked about it. It was a truth buried among many other truths, but I think that it's something that will be significant, and it certainly helped some of the furniture retailers last week, but not the home builders yet. I anticipate that might come.
So it seems like the big takeaway from the weekend, going back to Friday, is that Trump always chickens out.
Yeah.
So bailing on those tariffs at least for another year. We've got expectations for earnings per share growth, Ben, for the S&P 500 going into 2026. We're looking at a 14.4% number, slightly above last year's number that came in at 14.3.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is classic analysts just roll it forward. I think it's very interesting that most of the gain in profitability last year came on the margin side. So for all that talk of tariffs are going to just kill margins and all of that, that's actually having the opposite effect. Margins are going up, not down. It might not be because of tariffs, but that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing. And I think a lot of this is due to company priorities. Tom spoke about this last week as well, and that we might have just too many people working at jobs where they're not adding a ton of value. And I think you're seeing a lot of that start to come off the boil. You're seeing Coca-Cola making an announcement today. It's been in the works for some time. But if I'm working on the presentation, we'll have a 125 slide deck that you can all enjoy at your leisure.
Knock yourselves out, folks.
One of the big takeaways there is that CEOs have hiring expectations that are about as low as they've been. My daddy goes back to 2014, so not very long, but it goes back to its hiring expectations are as low as they've been. And yet sales expectations are right at trend. And so what you're seeing is that companies are doing more or the same with less, and they plan to do it this year. And I think that it's no longer a source of pride to say, look how many people we're hiring, we're doing. It's more a source of pride to be saying, look how much we're doing with fewer employees.
Yeah. Look at our profit.
Yep.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics say that they're going to reset the housing market index component of CPI in April because they need to adjust for the missed October numbers. That will be very timely, only on a 6-month lag. What's the rationale here in terms of why April?
So the data is collected. You basically, with the owner's equivalent rent survey, you collect it over 6 months, and then you average it, and then you make some other calculations. It's
Stupid.
It's a terrible metric, and this is one of the reasons it's a lagging metric, and why we discount owner's equivalent rent so much in the shelter component of the CPI report. But there was a lot of pushback after the October number came out, and they just skipped over housing inflation in the month of October. But again, it's not in the month of October. It's not over the course of the last 12 months. It was in that 1 month. So it has a grand total impact of about 7 to 9 basis points on the overall CPI number. It doesn't mean anything that they missed it. That's in terms of decision making, or it shouldn't. But, they're saying, for completeness, we're just going to reset in April. Coincidentally, when the tariffs, we start to lap the impact of tariffs, so we'll have some tailwinds down on that too. So I think that this is smart, and it takes one of the bullets out of the chamber that the naysayers would have said they're trying to manipulate the data. It's like, okay, well, we'll fix it, and it'll be 8 basis points.
The boys are not in Vegas this week, but CES is a big nerd conference. How many robots are we going to see out there? All of them?
Dog robots? The ones that do the flips, maybe?
We're going to see all kinds of robots.
I mean, I've said this a few times, but I mean, if you think that this last year, 2025, had a 1x increase in autonomy and what AI does in the world, then next year is going to be 4 2025s combined. So all of the progress that we saw this last year, increase that progress by 4x, because that's how much compute is being added. And think about what that means for autonomy, and think about what that means for robotics and all of these things. So I think that there's going to be a lot of promise. There's probably going to be a lot of failure, but I think there is going to be some progress.
Hicks, can you hit us with a robot voice for Ben on that, or is it too late? Too late? Oh, man, that would have been cool.
I will say one of our super users sent a podcast to listen to, and it's a guy named Peter Zeihan, who I've listened to him on a number of podcasts. He was on Joe Rogan maybe 2 years ago, and he's big on the demographic shifts in China, how the world population has had an age inversion. With the worldwide, there are more people over the age of 40 than under, and how that'll impact places like China and Japan, Italy. But he did have a really interesting piece on the automation, which is that a lot of people are saying that robots and automation inside of things like ports, factories, will offset a fair amount of that as the population dies off in places like Japan, and you end up with a smaller population. They're moving towards automation and all these things. But the downside economically that people don't talk about is that the robots themselves will not consume, will not reproduce, all of the things that you need young people to do, buy houses, all these different things. That's where it doesn't really offset. You may have the same ability to produce, but there's a lot less consumption, which is a really interesting thought, and something I hadn't really, it's sort of a second derivative of the robot play. So theoretically, we're all going to have our Rosie the robot that lives in our house and does our laundry for us. But, what will the ultimate net effect of that be is kind of hard to know going forward, particularly if the population collapses because no one's having children and the replacement rate is so low in a number of first world countries. So interesting sort of food for thought. I think that guy is very interesting. He brings up a lot of points that nobody talks about, but the robot thing I think was an interesting piece of that. So I would say I think the name of the podcast is Modern History. Some British guy – moderates it, but the guy was on there. Very interesting stuff. Modern Wisdom. Sorry, I had to start it to get to the front page.
There we go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, something tells me there's going to be at least a handful of folks at CES that are disappointed to see that the robots will not be reproducing.
Yeah.
Tough times for that guy. Kevin Warshtom, now the slight favorite over Kevin Hassett on Kalshi.
Yeah, so these odds have been all over the place. Over the weekend, we saw basically Hassett plummet and Warsh rocket up the charts. I looked just a moment ago, and they are neck and neck. Hassett has actually taken the lead again, 41-40. But at one point, he was up over 75% that Kevin Hassett was going to be the next Fed chair. So I would say hold on tight. We'll figure out what happens. I think that Besson ultimately is driving that ship, and I think he's going to pick the person who's right for the job, even if it might not be the person that Trump wants the most. I think that he's going to put the right person in the right seat. So there certainly seems to be some momentum there, but there's really no point in calling it until it's done. So we'll just keep an eye on that for now.
This week we'll get ISM manufacturing later today. We'll get October PCE inflation, ADP employment, ISM services, JOLTS job openings, Costco sales, some actual real data that will come through on Wednesday. Get the employment report Friday, and our first University of Michigan sentiment reading of the new year on Friday. So get fired up. Do we want to make some predictions on that, Tom?
I mean, I'm going to guess it's going to be still have a 4 handle.
Yeah.
There's been no hard line. Everyone points to this data as being something to trade on that has been more wrong than the University of Michigan 1-year inflation
The
expectations.
Fed's been more correct than University of Michigan.
Yeah, that's hard to do. And lest we forget, they said that inflation was going to be roughly around 6, topping out in 22, and it got to 9, and then they said it was going to be 9 this year. We topped out, I think, at the high point, 3.2. So I can't think of any example of someone who in a leadership position at the University of Michigan that may or may not have had to be institutionalized in the last few weeks, but I think we should do more of that. We need to take a real hard look at what they're doing over there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting if the absence of Sharon Moore has any impact on these readings.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were looking around. They were like, man, wage inflation is off the charts here, as he gave his assistant /
Lover.
very close friend a 100% increase. They're probably like, man, inflation's out of control right now.
That had to be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what they come up with this time.
His wages, though, cuts dramatically.
Down big time.
Dramatically. So we'll see.
All right. Over the weekend, Operation Absolute Resolve. Not a vodka, but actually a incredibly tactical military operation in Venezuela. Maduro. He's cuffed up. He's in jail. He's in New York. Pretty wild. I mean, I thought the mission in Iran was pretty crazy. From the brief details we have in the overview, this seems even crazier. I don't know. I can't wait for the movie.
Well, that's the thing, is there's going to be no drama.
I know.
Be like, what's the plot of the movie? It's
Boom.
like, well,
Got him.
we dropped in, picked him up, and flew away. Nobody was injured. Nothing got blown up. Just, I mean, it's pretty wild. You have to think, how many countries on Earth right now could we just swoop in and grab the president if we wanted to? It's got to be 95%. I mean, it might be tough in places like the UK or France, where they actually have like a somewhat competent military, but
I mean, I think France would
most of Africa probably no shot. South America, not doing
Clearly.
so hot. You know, Micronesia has no shot. I mean, you can take the whole country in about 8 seconds. It sounds like, but also Trump quietly said, "Hey, we cut the power." So
Yeah.
you got to wonder what exactly happened there.
He went full Liam Neeson in his description of we have a certain skill set.
It sounds like the power's not like real reliable in Venezuela though either. So
Yeah, he had
very strong.
He had a
skill
bunch
set.
of boots on the ground just plugging stuff in, and it just fried the surge. Just the surge was too much for them to handle. I mean, pretty crazy, Ben. What was your instant reaction when you heard?
I mean, so a few things. Just kind of the facts of what I observed is that the stunning execution of the mission in so many different realms of military operation was incredibly impressive. It makes me wonder if, from an investing standpoint, there are certain stocks that start with a P and end with a R that are worth pursuing.
Pepsi.
Pfizer.
Oh, Pfizer's a good one. Sneaky P there too.
The second thing is, I was surprised that the U.S. Second thing is, this is not a surprise that the U.S. or Europe even endorsed this, because neither of them have recognized the Maduro government. The third thing is the Trump administration statements about going in and basically running the country and we're in charge now, I thought are very on brand and also probably jarring to people. But I've also observed that, hey, the Venezuelan people are very happy Maduro's gone. And to Venezuelan people that we've spoken with, as well as kind of the images, I think what's really telling is when you're looking on both sides, going through all the networks, and no one's really saying that this was a bad thing to do. I think that people are potentially taking issue with some of the comments that have been made subsequently, and not having a path to, or not a defined path to new elections there. But I think that in terms of the mission itself, I think that most people are pretty on board with it.
I mean, I think we
sides.
saw during the longest government shutdown of all time that most people just kind of operate. Seems like Venezuela would be operating at a high level if, say, you could just do your thing and not get shot by the government while you were doing it over the next couple of weeks as they start to figure this thing out. But it makes you think about like the quagmires that were Afghanistan and Iraq. It took us so long to find Saddam Hussein. He famously was in a weird bunker underground. Could we have done that? Do we have the capability, or do we need to do the shock and awe? We need to get the boots on the ground. We needed to bomb people and then stay there for forever, 20 years. Same with Osama bin Laden. Like, is it possible that we could have done something like this? I mean, ultimately we got him. That's what we did. How come we couldn't have done that on the front side?
I mean, you do wonder, like with bin Laden, if you give Hegseth a couple Red Bulls and a bottle of Jägermeister, do we get that guy in 02?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great point, Andrew. And I think that, in the past, we've kind of done this. And if we have been successful, it's like, okay, now what do we do? Like, for example, like when we went into Afghanistan, Taliban fell in a couple weeks, I think it was. And then it was kind of like, oh, the dog caught the squirrel. Now what's it going to do? And it's, at the very least, I think there is a plan here with Venezuela. I think some people might not like the plan, but I think there is a plan of what's going to be done.
Marco Rubio has entered the transfer portal, and he is now the president of Venezuela.
I mean, the interesting thing is that I wonder how easy it'll be to fix, because ultimately in this hemisphere, the cultural differences are much more similar. The people of Venezuela are much more similar culturally to the United States and the Western world than the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes a big difference. All men are created equal. All cultures are not, I would argue. And that, this culture is much more closely aligned, and previously was much, much closer aligned prior to, Maduro coming to power and seizing the means of production and looking to implement the collectivists over the individual, as we've heard from Mamdani this weekend as well.
Yes.
Those are such good ideas.
That's a great point, Tom. It was seized. I mean, I think a lot of people are talking about, we're just going in and taking stuff. No,
we're taking it back.
It was already taken. Like, you got companies like Exxon, Schlumberger. American Airlines had $500 million in receipts that were just stolen, that the government said, no, this is ours now. And they had all these factories that the government came in and said, this is our factory. It wasn't the company's factory. And so,
there are Coke bottling plants down there that were just taken.
Oil and gas deals that were just, they had paid for the rights. They developed the facilities, and then Venezuelan government just came in and took it. And so I that is what is getting, and that's why you have Chevron that's up so much today. That's why you have Schlumberger that's up so much, because a lot of these things are going to be returned to sender, as it were. And it's interesting because under the Maduro regime, they didn't service any of these facilities, so they're all kind of in disrepair. They're probably producing, I've seen estimates, 18 to 20% of the oil that they could actually produce, but it was plenty enough to make him and his cronies billionaires, but it wasn't enough to make the country successful at all.
So you're telling me if the government seizes the means of production, the means of productions erode until they're no longer usable?
Makes you think.
Yeah.
My biggest question is why we let Maduro put on that Nike jumpsuit. I mean, supposedly he was in his PJs. I think that would have been a way cooler image.
I mean, there's been a lot of chatter that the European Union is mad about the operation, but also the fact that we gave him a bottle of water where the top came off. I mean, we got to think about the environment here, guys.
Yeah, paper straw next time. Obviously, part of the ramifications of this is just the impact on other nations. Lots of conflict going on around the world. Ben, what's top of mind in terms of, what are some places that are watching this and thinking,
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump's made a lot of comments in the last 48 hours about these other regions. So what I did is, I don't know how he produces so much content, by the way. It's very impressive, and it does take a lot of time to review all these comments in context, but I did so. And with a lot of these comments, whether it's with Greenland, whether it's with Mexico, he's asked questions, and basically, like, the people asking him the questions want a reaction. It's like, hey, you think you now have to do something with Cuba? And then he says, I think Cuba's going to fall anyway, because it was all Cubans protecting the Maduro. Like, they were the biggest casualties of this mission. And so he says Cuba's going to fall, which is taken. People say, Trump says Cuba's going to fall. He's going to go after Cuba. He's asked questions about, hey, do you like the government of Colombia? He's like, no, I don't like the government of the guy in Colombia. I think the cartels are running Mexico. I've offered Sheinbaum opportunities for U.S. troops to go in and help with the cartels. And so all of those things are, and then he's asked a question about Greenland, like, do you need Greenland? And he talks about,
here's why we need Greenland.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that all those comments need to be taken in context, because they're being used as this is going to happen next. And it's very different than what he said with Maduro. With Maduro for months, Trump has been asked about it, and he said, Maduro wants to make a deal. We're not going to get a deal. He's going to be gone. Period.
The surprising thing about Maduro is, like, obviously the timing, who knew when it was going to happen, but the surprising thing about Maduro is by the time you heard about it, he was on a boat and was on the way back here, and that it was actually significantly more tactical and less intrusive than I would have thought, but it was not surprising that Maduro's out.
Yep.
So it's interesting, that same podcast, I don't even know what you call this guy, the globalist analysis guy, was saying that, this is all part of if we can lock down our hemisphere, we're in a good position against the China and Russia situation if there ever was a war. Because, one, if we have the entire Western Hemisphere locked down and we can trade amongst ourselves, then we can produce everything we would need for a war. China, on the other hand, has a problem where they are a net importer of food and energy. And where do they get a lot of their food and energy? South America. And so that's going to be a big piece, is if you can suddenly kick out China and Russia from having an influence in Venezuela, which is a huge energy producer, suddenly you're in a good spot. And then you've got oceans protecting you, across the way. And so if you can then have Argentina on board, El Salvador, you start to get all of these, southern hemisphere, western hemisphere countries into a first world position that are producing and have good relations with you and have a similar culture, then suddenly we're very, we've got an iron, curtain of our own on this side of the world. And China's got a demographic problem. They've got to import food and energy. Russia's got a demographic problem, and they've lost hundreds of thousands of adult men in the last 4 or 5 years. And we're suddenly in a good position. And that, it's considered, they were calling it the Don Rowe doctrine as opposed to the Monroe Doctrine. But I think it's an interesting move. I think that these are things that are actively being discussed behind closed doors in Washington. I don't think that maybe the average person really considers these things on a global stage. But I mean, notably, there was a delegation of Chinese trade negotiators that arrived in Venezuela the following day and looked pretty silly when they had no one to negotiate with because he was on a boat headed back to the Southern District of New York. So pretty interesting, I think.
Ben, you mentioned some companies. As we look right now, Palantir's up 3.5% pre-market. Exxon's up 3%. Schlumberger up 7%. What other investment implications do you see from this?
I mean, I think I just kind of went through a lot of the companies where things have been stolen. So ConocoPhillips, they've already been awarded $10 billion from an international tribunal related to the expropriation. That, of course, remains unpaid. You have companies like Owens Corning or Owens, Illinois. In 2010, Chavez took 2 of their glass. At the time, they were the biggest producer of glass containers in the country, and then Chavez took the facilities. So they could benefit. Clorox, they had facilities taken. Kimberly-Clark, talked about American Airlines. So a lot of these companies, I do think that chasing these is probably not the way to go. If you look at the oil markets today, the oil markets are actually relatively flat now. I think there was some thought that oil is just going to get smashed because there's going to be additional supply. And I think that the way the market's treating that is probably appropriate right now. In other words, oil not going down a ton, because I think that a lot of this takes some time to go through. And then in terms of gold, I think this is probably gold positive in the short term. But I think it's also important to remember that whenever we see these big flare-ups, all the focus turns to geopolitical. But really, we don't see. It's not like dominoes on a board. This is a flare-up and gold spikes, and it'll probably come back down again.
All right, good stuff. Way to start the year off. I mean, we were just doing kind of end of the year content on the podcast, thinking back to stories that we'd totally forgotten about at the beginning of 2025. We're starting with a bang here. Big time.
Productive bang, though.
Yeah.
If you're banging and not being productive, that might be the theme for the year. Going back to the people getting laid off. If you're not producing, it's time to hit the road.
Absolute resolve.
I mean, people forget almost exactly a year ago today, the Biden administration put out a $25 million bounty on Maduro and said, hey, if you can get this done, we'll give you $25 million. So I don't know if that's still standing. Is Trump about to get paid?
I think Rubio and Hegseth are splitting it.
Yeah, they deserve it. They've worked very hard. So
I'm sure Hegseth will spend that responsibly.
More tattoos?
Yeah.
Probably.
It's going to be sick. All right. We'll wrap it up there. We'll be back tomorrow. Hope you all have a great day. Talk to you soon.